So we have Maya. First, let's have a look at the interface. So I'm going just from very start from UI. So of course, like in all the programs, we have things like file, edit, create, select, modify, and display and window. Well, not all the programs have it, but this is basically a constant part that doesn't change. And then we have something like mesh, edit, mesh tools, and so on and so on. And this part is changing depending on what you're doing. So in this case, I'm in modeling section, but if I would go to rigging, you see everything after Windows changes to things related to rigging. So of course, we'll start with modeling. So under file, we have things like, save, load, things like that. Under edit we have copy, paste, duplicate and all those things. Create, to create objects. Of course we will be mostly dealing with polygonal objects. Selection, I would rarely use it, but sometimes. Modify, display and windows, we might open some special windows for animation or something else. So that would be the most the window, not the window, the menu. Then we have some of the shortcuts here, like new file, open file, save, undo, redo, all those things. Then we have snapping and rendering things. So we will look at those much later. Then we have most important tools right here. So selection, select and move, select and rotate, select and scale. And the shortcuts for those are Q, W, E, R. Q is for select, move is W, E is rotate, and R is scale. Why on earth those letters? Notice that they are just one line, Q, W, E, R. Of course, you're familiar with A, W as D, so it's very similar. So you can quickly change it just by pressing these buttons here. So yeah, these are most important tools, and this is, just select and move, select, rotate, select and scale. Then let's look at shelves. So in Maya we have something called shelves, and these are the shelves. They are basically a set of tools related to curves in this case, polymodeling in this case. So we'll have like creating new primitives here. It's the same as if we were to go to create, and you see here we have the most important ones, the most commonly used ones. And then we have some modeling things. Some of them are from mesh, from edit mesh, some of the most kind of used things. Then we have something for sculpting, rigging, animation, rendering, particles, encloths, or actually I'm not sure if Maya has encloths or how's it called. And encloths, right? So whatever, Arnold for rendering, if you even go with that, Bifrost, and we could as well do our own shelf. How do you do it? New shelf, and you could put your important things that you are using, your custom shelf here. So next thing is windows. So these windows are called viewports, and by hitting space very quickly you go to four windows, or you select one of them and hit space very quickly, and you can minimize or maximize that viewport. You just select the viewport, actually by clicking any mouse button. Like normally we would use 3-button mouse, and it's really recommended to use 3-button mouse because the middle mouse button is also important here. You could also change viewports by pressing those. So 1 viewport, 4 viewports, 2 viewports, and this brings up outliner. So outliner is just a list of objects in the scene. Now you see we have some cameras that represent top, left, and whatever viewports, and default light and default object set. So basically nothing is there. Right, so when you have more objects, it's kind of nice to have outliner here, or like it's in now, we don't have anything, so I can just tear it apart and close it so it doesn't take up space. Here we have timeline. Again, before we start animating, we really don't care about it. It's basically a timeline, and this is how much we see. You know, I only want to care about from frame 1 to 14th, or it's much bigger time scale that we are looking at. And this is our current time, is frame 4. Alright, then we should know that Maya saves projects in kind of not only the Maya file, but it has all the collection of folders. So if we go to project window, you would see that here under this location, and it depends on your machine where it's set, or you can create a new location, it creates some folders along with the main scene file. So for starting it doesn't really matter, but later on, just to have everything organized, you should take care of it, you know, where it's located, where you save the files. Then here it's for scripting, so it's Maya script language. Maya, I don't know the name, but if you want to script things and control Maya by typing in commands, it's the area to do it. Also here at the bottom you see, you know, if I hover over some objects, some tools, it tells me what those things are doing. Okay, then we have things here. So we have, how's it called? Modeling Toolkit. We have things to control characters, the rigs. We have attribute editor and channel. Oh no, it's tool options, and this is a channel box channel. How's it called? Channel box. So and you also see there are tabs right here in the corner. These are the same things. So what are they? So the channel box is basically, if I have some object, I'll just create something, and you see that it has translate XYZ. So translate is basically moving in my scene, so now it's under Y, you know, it has some value. Oh, I moved it somewhere far away. 500, that's too much. Oh, 5000. 50 is good enough. So you see I can type in some values, rotation, scale, and so on. And it also has a history. So first I created my cube, and then I'm changing its position. I'm deleting the cube. So that's channel. I'll create another object, and we see we have attribute editor. This is where we will put some sort of things on it. So it might be a material, should be somewhere here, or no, radius. So basically some things, this is the material, things that are related to the selected object. If I deselect the object, we don't see anything in the attribute editor. So many things you will control regarding one specific object in this attribute editor. Then we have tool options. Oh no, these are tool options. And now you see I have a move tool. Why this tool? It's because it is selected right now. If I change to rotate, I have rotate tool options. So whatever tool I have, this relates to that tool. And I can get it also, I think, by double clicking. Yes, double clicking also brings the same menu as you get it from here. This is mostly for modeling, so we'll be looking at it a little bit later. Yeah, that's probably enough for now. Also, you might see that, notice that there is this workspace, and we can change the layout of Maya kind of for specific tasks. So for modeling, it's convenient to have this shelf and these things here. But of course we will go for Maya Classic or modeling standard, whichever you want. I should probably go to Classic just to have a kind of default thing. Right, what would be the next thing to talk about? Viewports, right. So we have 4 viewports, and you notice that in this, I will make a box, it will be easier to see. Right, so I'm creating a box so we can see perspective very well. And you'll see that in perspective viewport, I see that, you know, it has a perspective because all the lines go to a vanishing point, and it doesn't happen in these viewports because they are, I don't know, orthographic or whatever it's called, isometric, so it's more like a blueprint. Alright, what should we know about these viewports? So each viewport has some options here at the top, and the most important ones for us right now is these ones here, right here. So wireframe mode, we see wireframe of our object. So this box has, you know, 4 vertices on top, 4 edges, and so on and so on. We have shaded version. Now we have shaded plus textures, but we don't have textures. I haven't applied any textures, so we don't see any change. Wireframe on shaded, so sometimes again in modeling it's nice to see you know, what your objects are made of, to have this wireframe plus shaded. And then we have a lighted version, so we take into account light. We don't have any lights, so it's black. I'll just leave this one. Now we could also go to where, don't remember where the preferences live. Let me window. Where is the preferences? I'll just go through here. So these are animation preferences, but it brings us to the preferences window. And what can we see here? So basically we can hide some panels if we don't want to see them. You know, maybe you don't care about this, you could hide it. Also, it's kind of important settings under here. So notice that Maya uses Y as up axis. Other programs like 3D Max uses Z as up. I'm not sure about game engines, but I think Unity uses also Y as up. Anyway, this is something to think about, not now, but later on when we'll be using Maya for specific game engine, when you'll be creating, maybe you could change it. Also, you know, we are looking at centimeters or millimeters or inches or something else. And Y settings and timeline might be sometimes also important. So now our frame rate is 24 frames per second. So this is obviously for cinema, for film. Probably would normally use either American 30 frames per second or 25 European PAL 25. But that's later on when we go to animation. Alright, navigation in Viewport. If you have hit Alt button on your keyboard, or Option if you have Mac OS, and you hit left mouse button, you see I'm orbiting around the center of the world. Or I could be orbiting around center of, Alt and click, around selected object. Alt and other mouse button is zooming, so that's the right mouse button. Also the scroll in the mouse works the same way, it just zooms in. And Alt plus middle mouse button is something like space in Photoshop, it's panning, I think it's called. Okay, so similar functions, similar way everything works in these viewports. And then we move to actually moving objects. So you select an object and you see we have those three handles, and basically if you click on this one we will go only y-axis, this one goes x, I think, looking at those numbers, x, y, z, I think that's x, y, z, that's probably a z-axis. Or if you want to control something in two axes, so in this case would be z plus x, so I'm clicking on this one, click and drag, and I am moving it in two axes. You can see numbers changing right here, so we can control it in two axes. The same goes for rotation. You know, I control in one axis, or if I click in here in the middle, I could kind of freehand rotation, you know, in all axes. And same thing goes with scale. I scale in one axis, 2 axes, or if it's a human face, then you would want to always have it proportionally, so all 3 axes are scaling. Right, and of course you don't forget that it's WER to change those tools, and Q for just select, and we can't move it. Right, now to delete object you just hit delete. To create object you can either get it from here or from here, create polygons, and let's say a cube, and you see it will always appear in the center of a scene. There used to be an option, let me see, create primitives, interactive creation. If I click this one, if I again go to, I'll just grab it from here, you see I will start, let's say here, click and drag, and now I create it in some specific location. So some people like this, some don't, up to you which one you will be using. I will turn it off because I should have default, right? So it's polygon, primitives, turn it off. Also, notice that in Maya, here you have just a button, and in many of the menus, you have this small box here. So again, if I go to create, polygons, and instead of hitting cube, I will go for a box. It's called options. So I can make an object which will be, 2 units, 2 units, and 2 units size with some divisions. Let's say create, and you see now my box is a bit different. It has these divisions in the center. F is for focus. If I have my object somewhere far away and now it's hard to look at it, I just hit F, so it's focus. Alright, what else? So yeah, now we can create objects, we can delete objects, and we can move objects. Now let's duplicate the object. So one way is just Ctrl+C, Ctrl+V, and we have it in the same location, but actually there are 2 objects. So if I move it, you see there are 2 objects. Alternatively, I could hit, I think it's Ctrl+D, oh no, I have to select something, Ctrl+D, and it's the same thing. I have it duplicated. Also, I could do this way, edit, duplicate, and instead of just duplicate, I will go for duplicate special and go to options. And you see that first of all I have copy or instance and number of copies. Let's say I have 5 copies, and I will translate them to units, and let's say they will be instances. Duplicate special. So you see they moved by 2 units, and there are 5, if I remember correctly, 5 copies. They all moved by 2 units to the right, and also they are not copies but instances. And what does that do? Notice I'm editing the model. You don't know how I'm doing it yet, but they are following the same editing, so they are kind of clones. So sometimes you want it, sometimes you don't want it. Usually we want it if we are modeling half of the model, and we want the other half just to be the same, so we don't waste time modeling 2 things, 2 same things. But usually you would just duplicate without instance, and you would have just a simple copy. I'll make a bigger space, not 2 or 5, duplicate, and you see now if I edit any of these, the rest won't change. Again, editing, now the others don't change. Okay, so now I want you to kind of get acquainted to this workspace, to the shortcuts and all of that. So I would like you to write your name out of boxes. So my name is Mantas. I will just create a couple of boxes. You see that I can select just by click and drag, shift, and I clone So shift is also for selection. If I shift and click, I select something. If I release and I click on the edge, I deselect the thing. But I could also clone with the same shift key. So try playing out with that, playing with this, and let's try kind of doing something like that. Yeah, what am I doing? Oh, yeah, I'll just do it very simple. So let's say my name is Montes, so I'll write M. Oops. So that's an M.